think's winning this fight, Jake Paul or Tank Davis?
Tank all day. Tank Davis ain't gonna fuck him up.
Tank killing him.
This nigga knocking this nigga out.
He's gonna bust his ass.
Tank Davis is the truth.
He weighed in at 227.2 pounds. He holds a near-perfect professional record of 10 victories, opposite just 1 defeat, with 7 of those wins coming by way of knockout.
He break it down a little bit, Tank. Straight left.
The undefeated WBA lightweight champion of the world, Gervonta Tank.
Jake Paul vs. Gervonta Davis. Full fight, 2000 fights. Shocking knockout. The Jake Paul vs. Gervonta Davis fight in 2025 was absolute madness from the opening bell. The internet's loudest villain stepped into the ring with boxing's most feared knockout artist, and what followed was pure destruction. Was this the night Jake Paul shocked the world, or the moment Tank Davis ended his empire with one devastating punch? Nobody thought this fight would actually happen. A YouTuber with a flair for chaos stepping into the same ring as one of boxing's most feared knockout artists? It sounded more like a headline designed to break the internet than a legitimate sporting event. Yet, there they were, Jake Paul and Gervonta Tank Davis, set to clash under the bright lights of State Farm Arena on October 14, 2025. One was built on fame, the other on fear. Jake Paul, the self-made villain who built an empire off controversy, versus Gervonta Davis, a man forged by struggle and known for ending careers with a single punch. Even the rules of the fight sounded unreal. A hybrid professional exhibition, 10 rounds, 12-ounce gloves for safety, and a knockout bonus built into the contract. It wasn't supposed to count on paper, but everyone watching knew reputations were on the line. The size difference was wild. Jake Paul, walking in at around 200 pounds, towering over Tank, who fought his entire career at lightweight. On paper, it looked like a mismatch. In reality, it was a ticking time bomb. For Jake Paul, this was more than a fight. It was another chapter in a career that's defied logic since the beginning. He didn't come from boxing gyms or amateur tournaments. He came from Vine. A 6-second app turned him into a global name before most boxers his age had even earned their first paycheck. Then came YouTube. Pranks, stunts, feuds, and chaos that made him famous but also infamous. By 2017, he was one of the most talked about creators on earth. By 2018, he was one of the most hated. That same year, he decided to fight. At first, everyone laughed. Then he started knocking people out, but Jake didn't stumble into boxing. He turned it into a business. His debut fights against fellow influencers pulled numbers that real boxers could only dream of. When he leveled former NBA player Nate Robinson cold on the canvas, it wasn't just a meme, it was a statement. Then came Ben Askren, Tyron Woodley, Anderson Silva, names from different combat worlds, each adding fuel to his reputation. Every win bought him more respect, but also more resentment. People didn't know whether to call him a genius or a fraud, and that's exactly what he wanted. Jake Paul made boxing entertainment again. He knew how to sell a fight better than anyone. Part showman, part troublemaker, part underdog. Every press conference was a headline. Every fight night was a cultural event. By the time he faced Mike Tyson in 2024, even the skeptics had to admit it. Jake Paul was no longer a joke. That fight shattered records, becoming the biggest boxing gate in US history outside Las Vegas. He wasn't just fighting opponents, he was fighting expectations. And somehow, he kept winning that battle too. Still, beneath all the bravado, there was something different this time. Facing Gervonta Davis wasn't another influencer crossover, it was real danger. Davis wasn't retired, wasn't washed up, and definitely wasn't showing up for a paycheck. He was in his prime, a reigning world champion with a 30-1 record, 28 of those wins by knockout. Every punch he threw came with bad intentions. This wasn't a guy Jake could out-talk. Tank didn't need trash talk, he just smiled. That quiet, unnerving kind of confidence that made you wonder if he already knew exactly how this story ended. People called it madness. Analysts said Jake had finally gone too far. A natural cruiserweight stepping into the ring with a lightweight destroyer sounded like a suicide mission. But both camps knew what they were doing. Jake was chasing legitimacy. Tank was chasing spectacle, and maybe a little pride. For Davis, this fight wasn't about money or fame. It was about sending a message to every loudmouth influencer who thought boxing was easy. This sport still belongs to boxers. Tank wasn't just another fighter, he was the boogeyman of boxing. 30 wins, 28 knockouts, 1 draw, 0 losses, a 93% knockout rate. His punches didn't just land, they erased timelines. Critics said he didn't just win fights, he ended careers. He walked into 2025 with fire in his chest and a chip on his shoulder after that controversial draw with Lamont Roach. This wasn't just another payday, it was personal. He wanted to remind the world that boxing wasn't about TikTok views or YouTube thumbnails. It was about blood, skill, and cold precision. When reporters asked if Jake's 7-inch reach would be a problem, Tank didn't even flinch. He just grinned and said, "Height don't matter when you can't see my left coming." One sentence, and the internet melted. Memes, headlines, edits, everywhere. It was cold, simple, and terrifyingly true. That one line said everything you needed to know about Tank Davis. No games, no gimmicks, just violence. Gervonta Tank Davis isn't the type to talk your ear off. He's the type to let his fists do the talking. And when they speak, they usually say goodnight. While Jake Paul built his fame with viral stunts and internet chaos, Tank built his through sweat, survival, and a whole lot of knockouts. These two couldn't be more different. Jake came from Wi-Fi, Tank came from war zones, Baltimore's Sandtown Winchester neighborhood where making it to 18 is an accomplishment by itself. He wasn't supposed to make it out, but somehow he did. Gloves on his hands, fire in his chest. He started boxing at the age of 5. That's right, now 5 years old. And he didn't just dabble, he lived inside that gym. The Upton Boxing Center in Baltimore became his second home, and his coach, Calvin Ford, became the father figure he never had. Ford wasn't just a trainer, he was a legend in his own right. The man who inspired the boxing coach character in HBO's The Wire. So yeah, Tank's story literally has a Hollywood connection, except this one's real. By his teens, Gervonta wasn't just fighting, he was winning. National Golden Gloves, Junior Olympics, everything. Over 200 amateur fights, most of them ending before the judges even had time to sit down properly. His amateur record? 206 wins, 15 losses. That's not a boxer, that's a prodigy in gloves. And when he turned pro at just 18, he did it the same way he's done everything since, with zero fear. From there, it was a straight-up climb through the ranks. In 2017, he beat Jose Pedraza to win his first world title, the IBF super featherweight belt. And he did it by knockout, of course. Then came the WBA super featherweight title, then lightweight, then super lightweight. Every division he touched, he dominated. No losses, no backing down, no gimmicks, just raw, unfiltered destruction. He's one of the few fighters today who doesn't need to yell or trash talk to sell pay-per-views. His nickname, Tank, isn't branding. It's a warning. What makes Tank different isn't just his power. Though, let's be honest, 28 knockouts and 30 wins is terrifying. It's his calmness. He doesn't rush. He doesn't react. He just calculates. It's that eerie kind of quiet before a storm. Jake Paul runs on energy, chaos, and noise. Tank runs on silence and precision. You can feel the difference the moment they enter a room. One looks like he's ready for a camera. The other looks like he's ready for a fight. And that's what made the announcement of their fight so surreal. Out of nowhere, Netflix drops the bomb. Jake Paul versus Gervonta Tank Davis. A hybrid professional exhibition. Everyone thought it was a typo, like surely this wasn't real. But it was. The internet lost its mind. You had boxing purists calling it a disgrace, influencers calling it genius, and fans just sitting there like, what in the crossover multiverse is this? Netflix billed it as a hybrid bout. 10 rounds, 12-ounce gloves for safety, but with one crazy twist, a knockout bonus written right into the contract. You heard that right. Whoever knocked the other guy out got paid extra. Only Jake Paul could turn a safety clause into a side quest for violence. Still, the concept was wild. You had an undefeated world champion with real belts and real bodies on his resume stepping into a ring with a guy who started boxing as a side hustle. It was influencer versus icon, power versus precision, ego versus experience. And for Netflix, it was a gold mine, a storyline so ridiculous that it had to be watched. The backlash was instant. Purists called it a clown show. Critics said it mocked boxing's legacy. Social media went nuclear with memes. Jake, of course, loved every second of it. He thrived on hate. It was his oxygen. Every insult was another ticket sold. He went online talking about how he'd shock the world again, claiming, "Tank's never fought someone who hits like me." Meanwhile, Tank barely said a word. No fancy promos, no back and forth, just a simple line that sent chills through everyone watching. He wanted smoke, now he'll get it. That's all it took, because when Tank says he's bringing smoke, you already know what that means, and that's the thing. This wasn't just another exhibition, it was a collision of philosophies. Jake was all about building hype, creating moments, owning headlines. Tank was about something deeper, reminding the world that boxing wasn't born in boardrooms or YouTube studios. It was born in places like Baltimore, in gyms where dreams and survival shared the same space. But behind the cameras, both camps were living in hell. Jake's camp was built around survival. Endless sparring, body conditioning, breathing through punishment. His trainers knew the truth. You can't beat Tank Davis. You just have to survive him long enough to land something big. Every drill screamed endurance, defense, discipline. Across the country, Tank's camp was a war lab. Counterpunch drills, timing traps, frame-by-frame film study. He studied Jake's every move, his every flaw. He noticed the tiniest detail, how Jake dropped his right hand after every jab and planned to punish it until that arm stopped moving. By the time Fight Week landed in Miami, the entire city was buzzing. The bay shimmered with yachts. Influencers live-streamed every second. Fans from around the globe flooded in. The Kaseya Center turned into a cathedral of chaos, flashing lights, roaring chants, and cameras everywhere. It wasn't just a boxing event anymore, it was a cultural riot. Tickets sold out in minutes. Netflix was hyping it like the next billion-dollar blockbuster. Headlines dominated every feed. Fame meets fury. Influencer versus icon. Can Jake survive Tank? The internet was split right down the middle, half praying for Jake to pull off the impossible, half waiting to watch him get dismantled, and through it all, Jake just kept saying the same thing over and over. They don't respect me, but they will. That's what made this fight feel different, and it wasn't just about who could punch harder, it was psychological, philosophical. Two men from completely different worlds colliding in a way that didn't make sense but somehow made perfect sense. One was forged in Baltimore's streets, raised on survival. The other was built in the chaos of internet fame, hardened by public hate. One fought for legacy, the other for validation. And yet, here they were, two different universes about to collide under the same lights. Fame versus fear, clout versus craft. One man fighting to prove he belonged and another ready to prove that he didn't. A fight that felt too surreal to be real, until the bell rang and one of them stopped moving. As the date got closer, the line between spectacle and sport began to blur. Fans didn't know if they were tuning in for a boxing match or a cultural moment. But one thing was clear. Whatever happened that night would be talked about for years. Because this wasn't just another fight. It was everything boxing had become. Power, fame, ego, redemption, all in one ring. And before the first punch was even thrown, the world was already watching. The weeks leading up to the fight felt less like a sporting event and more like a psychological chess match played under stadium lights. Jake Paul knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't just fighting Tank Davis, he was fighting public opinion. And the guy's biggest weapon wasn't even his right hand, it was his mouth. Jake came into every press event with that same confident smirk, the kind that says, "I already won. You just don't know it yet." He wasn't trying to beat Tank in the ring yet. He was trying to crawl inside his head first. He called Tank tiny, joked that he needed a step stool for the face-off, and even said, "Tank's never faced someone who hits like me." Classic Jake, equal parts cocky and calculated. You could almost see the internet eating it up. Clips of him trolling Tank went viral overnight. It wasn't just trash talk, it was marketing. Jake Paul was building anticipation like a villain in a movie. The kind you hate, but secretly can't wait to see what he does next. Tank, though, he didn't bite. No shouting, no drama, no energy wasted. He just sat there at every press conference, hood up, chewing gum, staring through Jake like he was already picturing how he'd fold him. It was the perfect contrast. The loudmouth versus the silent killer. When Jake cracked jokes, Tank barely moved. When Jake tried to bait him, Tank's only response was a calm, cold line. Talk all you want, you'll shut up in the ring. That's it. 8 words. And somehow that silence said more than all of Jake's rants combined. The press conferences became instant chaos. Cameras flashing, reporters shouting, fans arguing online. Half the world convinced Jake was out of his mind. The other half convinced he might actually pull it off. At one point, Jake stood up during the face-off, pointing down at Tank, saying, "You're looking at your retirement party." Tank didn't flinch. He just smiled. That eerie, confident kind of grin that made everyone in the room shift in their seats. Then, almost whispering, he said, 2 rounds. That's all I need." And just like that, the whole crowd went quiet. You could feel the tension dripping off the stage. Then Netflix dropped the trailer. And it wasn't just a promo, it was a movie. Dramatic music, slow-motion training shots, the voiceover saying things like, "When fame meets fury, someone's legacy burns." Within hours, it had millions of views. Suddenly, the fight wasn't just a sporting event, it was a global spectacle. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, everyone was talking about it. The internet turned into a digital war zone. Jake's gonna shock the world again, versus Tank's about to end YouTube boxing forever. You couldn't scroll for more than a few seconds without seeing a clip, a meme, or a heated debate. Behind all the noise, both camps were locked in. Jake's training was as intense as it was unconventional. He flew in former pros, power punchers, even MMA strikers. Anyone who could help him sharpen that one-shot knockout power. He posted training clips of himself throwing bombs, captioned with lines like, "The problem child is coming." It was half training, half marketing, and all about keeping the world talking. Tank's camp, though? Total opposite. No flashy clips, no bravado, just grind. He spent hours perfecting the small things, the head movement, footwork, angles. His coach Calvin Ford kept reminding him, "He's strong, but he's slow. Let him chase you into his own mistake." Tank was studying every pattern, every habit, every twitch Jake made in past fights. He wasn't training for the spectacle. He was training for the silence that comes right after a knockout. And then finally, fight night arrived. Atlanta's State Farm Arena was unrecognizable. Red and blue lights flooding the rafters, celebrities everywhere. You had NBA stars in the front row, rappers with diamond chains, influencers live streaming from their seats. Even people who didn't know the difference between a jab and a hook suddenly had boxing fever. This wasn't just a fight, it was an event. The broadcast was something else too. A mashup of ESPN's seriousness and Netflix's cinematic flair. You had veteran boxing commentators sharing the desk with influencers and actors. It was the perfect reflection of what this fight had become. Half sport, half entertainment, all chaos. Then came the entrances. Jake went first, and of course he made it a show. Flames shooting up, heavy bass pounding through the arena, Problem Child glowing across the stage in giant letters. He looked confident, even relaxed. Smiling, pointing at the crowd, mouthing, "I told you so." You could almost forget that on the other side of that ramp waited one of the deadliest punchers in boxing. Then the lights dimmed. No music, no fireworks, just silence. Gervonta Davis walked out slow, hood over his head, eyes fixed on the ring. The crowd went quiet, not out of boredom, but out of respect. You could feel the energy shift. Jake's entrance screamed, "Look at me." Tank's entrance whispered, "You're about to remember me." When they finally stood across from each other in the ring, the contrast was unreal. Jake looked huge, a full head taller, broader, heavier. Tank looked compact, solid, like every ounce of his body was built for destruction. The ref gave instructions, both men nodded, and for a split second, everything, the noise, the lights, the drama, disappeared. Then came the bell, that sharp clang that slices through the air. The world held its breath. Every fan, every hater, every person who swore they wouldn't watch but still tuned in. All of them leaned in closer. This was it. 2 worlds. 1 ring. 1 truth about to be revealed. Round 1. You could feel the tension dripping off the canvas. Jake Paul came out like a man who believed his own hype. Hands high, chin tucked, smile plastered on his face. He started pumping that jab, snapping it out with confidence, circling Tank, trying to keep the fight long. For a moment, it looked good. The crowd roared every time Jake landed even a half-decent shot. Tank? Calm as ever. He didn't throw much, just studied. Eyes locked in, calculating. You could almost see him downloading Jake's patterns, step by step. By the end of the round, Jake looked sharp, confident, and maybe, just maybe, a little too comfortable. Round 2 started different. Tank came out lighter on his feet, shoulders loose, that trademark bounce in his step. Jake jabbed again. Tank slipped under it like smoke. Then thud, a body shot that echoed through the arena. The sound was different, heavy, real. Jake flinched just a little, and that's when you realized Tank wasn't reacting anymore. He was setting traps. Every time Jake threw that jab, Tank got a little closer, a little smarter. By round 3, the crowd started shifting. They could feel it too. Jake's breathing deepened, his smile faded. Tank's timing? Razor sharp. He wasn't headhunting. He was breaking Jake down piece by piece. Then came round 4, and for a split second, it looked like the script had flipped. Jake, backed against the ropes, swung a monster of an overhand right, the kind that knocked out Nate Robinson, the kind that went viral for months. And boom, it landed clean on Tank's chin. The arena erupted. People jumped out of their seats, cameras flashing, commentators screaming, "Jake caught him! Jake caught him!" But then, Tank smiled. That cold, eerie smile, the kind that says, "You made a mistake." He nodded at Jake, almost thanking him, like, "Okay, now it's my turn." And from that moment on, you could feel the shift. Rounds 5 and 6 were a masterclass in controlled violence. Tank started walking Jake down step by step. No rush, no panic, just relentless pressure. He slipped jabs like they were slow-motion punches in a dream. Every time Jake threw, Tank countered with something faster, cleaner, harder. His hooks found home. His uppercuts were threading through Jake's guard like heat-seeking missiles. Jake still swung back. You gotta give him credit. But his punches started losing that snap. His feet slowed down. The ring started to feel smaller. By the time round 7 rolled around, Jake's body language told the truth. Shoulders sagging, mouth open, legs heavy. Tank, on the other hand, looked like he'd just warmed up. He was stalking him now, surgical, methodical. Jake tried to keep him away with a desperate jab, but Tank just slipped, rolled, and bam! 2 body shots and a right hook upstairs. Jake stumbled backward into the corner. The crowd went insane. Everyone stood up. You could feel it building, that sense of something's about to happen. Jake tried to fight his way out, swinging wild. Hooks, overhands, pure chaos. But Tank stayed composed, weaving through everything like he was dodging rain. Then, out of nowhere, he launched it. A short, snapping left uppercut. The moment it landed, time froze. Jake's head jolted back, eyes glassy. His body folded like someone had just unplugged him. And then, silence. The kind of silence you only get in those once-in-a-lifetime moments where everyone realizes they just witnessed something unreal. The referee sprinted in, waved it off immediately. KO. Done. Gervonta Tank Davis had just ended the Netflix spectacle with 1 clean shot. The crowd erupted like a bomb went off. Commentators were losing their minds. Tank Davis just erased the internet! Jake lay still for a few seconds before finally sitting up, dazed but awake. You could see the respect in his eyes, all that confidence, all that talk. Gone, replaced by something real. Tank stood in the corner, calm, hands raised, no celebration, no taunting, just business, just legacy. And then came the aftermath, the chaos outside the ring that almost matched what happened inside it. The internet exploded. Hashtags like #TankKO and #PaulVsDavis were trending worldwide within minutes. Memes, slow-motion replays, reaction videos, it was everywhere. Even people who hadn't watched the fight were suddenly talking about it. But the real twist? Respect. When Jake finally got to his feet, he walked straight over to Tank, hugged him, and said into the mic, "That's real power. That's the truth." No excuses, no arrogance, just respect. For the first time, the entire arena applauded him, not for winning, but for standing up, literally and figuratively. Tank, as always, kept it short and cold. Respect to Jake, but this is boxing. This is real. Simple. Honest. Brutal. The perfect summary of what everyone had just witnessed. Analysts couldn't believe it. Not because Tank won, that part made sense, but because of how big it had all become. The most watched boxing event ever streamed on Netflix, over 60 million live viewers worldwide. Even Dana White and Floyd Mayweather tweeted about it. It wasn't just a fight, it was a cultural event. Jake may have lost, but he walked out having done something nobody else had. Dragging boxing into the digital era, making people who'd never cared about the sport actually watch. He blurred the line between entertainment and combat. And Tank reminded the world that at the end of the day, boxing isn't about clout or followers. It's about what happens when two people step into that ring and only one walks out standing. When the smoke cleared and the cameras stopped flashing, something deeper lingered in the air. Respect. Jake Paul, the internet's loudest rebel, had done the unthinkable. He walked into the fire, faced one of boxing's deadliest men, and didn't run. For the first time, people didn't see a YouTuber chasing clout. They saw a fighter who bled for validation, who took real punches chasing a dream most said he didn't deserve. That night, Jake Paul became more than a headline. He became a warning. Don't underestimate obsession. And then there was Gervonta Tank Davis, the monster who reminded everyone why boxing isn't a game. His fists spoke the ancient language of the sport. Precise, ruthless, and beautiful. He didn't just defend boxing's legacy, he reclaimed it. Across generations, from old-school purists to new-age fans, everyone agreed. Tank wasn't just the knockout king, he was the standard. The fight blurred every line, fame and fighting, entertainment and execution, digital and physical. It wasn't just a clash, it was a cultural reset. Like this video and subscribe to the channel to get more updates.